I'm disappointed in the Clippers organization.
Stop it now. You know CP3 ain't no saint. He was doing stuff behind T. Lue's back. Going to players, whispering, saying things when the team is already struggling and going through a lot.
Alright guys, do you remember the CP3 video I dropped a few days ago? Well, it got worse. Way worse. Because a video just leaked and social media is on fire right now. And I mean it. Ty Lue, the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, the guy who just kicked Chris Paul off the team at 2:30 in the morning, the guy who reportedly refused to even meet with CP3 when he asked for a conversation, was caught on camera during a preseason practice saying this about Chris Paul.
CP ain't no name on it. Get the ball played and get the action.
That's a direct quote from the head coach about a 12-time All-Star, a future first ballot Hall of Famer, the man who put the Clippers on the map. Now look, before we go any further, let me be clear about something. The video was reportedly from an open practice back in preseason at the Pechanga Reservation in California, and former Clipper Bones Hyland has already come out to defend Ty Lue, saying it's just how he jokes around with players. But here's the thing, when you just kicked a legend off your team in the middle of the night, when you just refused to meet with him, when you just stopped speaking to him for weeks, this video hits differently now. And that's not even the craziest part, because since my last video dropped, we now know exactly what triggered all of this. Remember that cryptic Instagram post CP3 made? The one where he just posted the dictionary definition of leeway? Well, we finally know what that's all about. And trust me, it's gonna make you look at this entire situation completely differently. So before we get to the content, we're still running jersey giveaways on this channel. To enter, you just have to subscribe, turn on my notifications, and comment what jersey you want in the comment section down below. I'm running the same giveaway on my Instagram page. You just have to follow, turn on my notifications on Instagram, and comment on my content what jersey you'd like. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? So I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the Chris Paul situation. If not, I advise you check out my last video on this topic, just posted a few days ago. But let me tell you what this incident was all about. It's November 29th. The Los Angeles Clippers are facing off against the lowly Dallas Mavericks. The Clippers are in the fourth quarter. Kawhi Leonard is on a minutes restriction after coming off the bench. And according to NBA insider Chris B. Haynes, Kawhi was struggling to keep up with Klay Thompson defensively. So during a timeout, CP3 did what CP3 has done for 21 years. He walked over to Kawhi and asked him a simple question. Hey man, are you fresh enough? Do you feel good? You feel like you can stick with Klay? Then he went to his teammate, which I know as NBA fans, if you look at one of the best two-way players in NBA history and are asking him if you can keep up with a washed up Klay Thompson in the midst of one of his worst seasons of all time, it does sound a little embarrassing. But this is a legitimate question to ask if a player is struggling in the middle of the game defending another player. He then went to his teammates and suggested, hey y'all, maybe you want to switch this. Wait till he gets warm before he goes and guards Klay. That's it. That's what he did. He saw a teammate struggling, he checked on him, and then he suggested an adjustment. You know, just leadership, being a good teammate.
Just his leadership, talking to the guys, talking to the coaches of, what he sees, what we can do better. And so before we acquired him, we just told him he wasn't going to be a every night guy. And so he understood that. And so he has so much knowledge and he's been around the game so long that he can help us in other ways as well.
But here's where things went left. The next day on the team plane, assistant coach Jeff Van Gundy called a meeting with Chris Paul. And according to Haynes, Van Gundy asked CP3 point blank, did you change the defensive assignment yesterday? CP3's response was, no, I didn't change the assignment. I just suggested we might want to have somebody else on Klay right now because Kawhi wasn't warm yet. And that's when Van Gundy dropped this line.
Jeff Van Gundy told Chris Paul, listen, you might have had leeway in other places to be able to change up defensive coverages, but you don't have that leeway here.
Let me say that again for the people in the back. The assistant coach told a 12-time All-Star, 9-time All-Defensive player, and 21-year veteran that he doesn't have the leeway to make suggestions on the court. And according to Haynes, this wasn't an isolated incident. There were multiple verbal dust-ups between Van Gundy and CP3.
That was just one of the minor verbal incidents between Jeff Van Gundy and Chris Paul. That was one of a few.
So when CP3 posted that leeway definition on Instagram a few days later, now you know exactly what that was about. He was sending a message, but the Clippers didn't want to hear that message. 5 days after that Mavericks game, they sent him home. Now, I'm going to keep it real with you guys because that's just what we do on this channel. Not everybody is on CP3's side here. Kendrick Perkins went on the Road Trippin' podcast and said something that's got people talking.
Richard Jefferson won a championship with Ty Lue. Shannon Fry won a championship with Ty Lue. So they know Ty Lue very well. They know that it takes a lot to get to Ty Lue. They know what type of person Ty Lue is.
And Perkins asked the question that a lot of people are asking.
We hear these stories about, oh, Ty Lue wasn't speaking to him, or he wouldn't take a meeting with him, or they wasn't on speaking terms for 3 weeks. It gets you to thinking, what the hell was CP3 doing?
And then Perk dropped this.
He was doing stuff behind T. Lue's back, going to players, whispering, saying things, and causing turmoil when the team is already struggling and going through a lot.
Perkins also said he's been getting text messages from former teammates of CP3, and here's what they're telling him.
A lot of text messages I've been receiving that's saying, hey, Perk, stop it now, you know CP3 ain't no saint. And these were people that actually shared a locker room with CP3.
Perk also mentioned a specific play where Van Gundy gave a young player a defensive assignment during a timeout. And when the huddle broke, CP3 allegedly told that same player to do the opposite.
They're on the road. They're playing the game. They up by double digits. Coach Van Gundy calls a defensive scheme to one of the young guys and, hey, we're going to do this. They break out of the timeout. Chris Paul goes to the young fella and tell him, no, you need to do this. He does what Chris Paul tells him to do, and he get his ass cooked.
Now, if this is true, that's a problem. You're putting young players in an impossible situation. Who do they listen to? The coach or the Hall of Fame point guard that's been known for his basketball IQ? But here's my question. Even if all of that is true, does it justify sending a 40-year-old Clipper legend home in the middle of the night during his farewell season? Does it justify refusing to even meet with him when he requested a conversation? Because there's a difference between addressing behavior professionally and humiliating a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest Clippers in Clipper history. And speaking of patterns, DeMarcus Cousins went off on Ty Lue this week, and what he said is pretty damning.
I'm really disappointed in T. Lue and, how he's handled this situation. It's starting to become a pattern. I've experienced it. He's been on record talking about, how me and him didn't talk for a while. I saw him do it to Rajon Rondo the same year that we were there. Now you're doing it to Chris Paul. It was rumblings that you did it to John Wall.
Let me run through this real quick. DeMarcus Cousins in the 2020-21 season gets traded to the Clippers, played just 16 games, and is gone. Rajon Rondo, same season, made 18 appearances, gone. John Wall, 2022, made 34 appearances, gone. And now CP3, 16 games into his farewell season, gone. Cousins said something else that really hit.
To brand yourself, as a player's coach, you're not really showing those tendencies with these patterns that are continuing to happen.
You know what makes this even crazier? Even DeMarcus Cousins, a guy who literally said, I still hate the out of Chris Paul, even he thinks this was wrong. That should tell you everything you need to know. Blake Griffin also spoke out, and his words were powerful.
I'm disappointed in the Clippers organization. No communication with Ty Lue, no communication with Steve Ballmer.
But then Blake said something that really got my attention. That three was going up in the rafters. That three was going up, and you do this to that guy? Blake is saying Chris Paul's number 3 was going to be retired by this franchise, the first Clipper ever to have that honor, and they just threw him out like he was nothing. Blake also kept it 100 about who the real problem is. This isn't a Clippers thing. It's an isolated issue with Lawrence Frank and the way he's gone about treating certain players. There's one particular person in these scenarios who is the common denominator, and the common denominator is Lawrence Frank. And remember, Blake knows what it feels like. In my last video, I told you how they traded him 7 months after he said he wanted his legacy to be a Clipper. The franchise doesn't just move on from players, they humiliate them. Crispy Haynes reached out to Chris Paul to get his thoughts on everything that's happened, and here's what CP3 told him. I'm still scarred by it all. I'm still processing everything, but I'm staying ready. Still scarred after 21 years in this league, after everything he's accomplished, after coming home to finish his career where it started. He's scarred. And you know what else he did? He posted a FaceTime screenshot with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. The Lob City trio reunited, but not in the way many of them wanted. 3 legends all done dirty by the same franchise. Mark J. Spears also confirmed that CP3 has no intention of retiring. He's staying ready, but he wants to play out his farewell season somewhere else. But here's what's confusing me. You remember that clip I showed you in the very beginning of the video of Ty Lue just saying F Chris Paul?
CP ain't no name on it.
But look at what Legends posted on his X account. If you take a look at this entire practice, Chris Paul is going to James Harden and discussing running a more structured offense. That's when Ty Lue says what he says.
Ain't no name on it. Get the ball played and gets the action.
But to Ty Lue's credit, he actually goes to Chris Paul and tries to explain to him why his thinking is wrong. Now at this point, will anyone give CP3 his farewell? December 15th is the earliest the Clippers can trade CP3. Their other options are to waive him and absorb his $3.6 million salary or agree to a buyout. But here's where it gets complicated. The Lakers, the most obvious destination, reportedly don't have interest in signing CP3. Even though he's best friends with LeBron, even though he has a relationship with JJ Redick, even though he wants to stay near his family. Plus, the Lakers can't even sign a 15th player until January 19th due to the roster rules. According to Mark Spears, a few GMs have said that they're not interested in adding CP3 because of his age and because they don't want to use a final roster spot on him. And then there's the elephant in the room. Some NBA executives sympathize with the Clippers. They understand the decision because while the media has been ripping the Clippers apart, behind closed doors, some people think CP3 was the problem. Austin Rivers, who played with CP3 for 2 seasons, put it like this: he's very demanding. It's not nice sometimes either. So where does that leave us? A Hall of Famer, a legend, a guy who just wanted to come home and finish his career, and nobody might want him. That's the reality we're looking at right now. Look, I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. I don't know if CP3 was the perfect teammate. I don't know if he crossed the line with the coaches. I don't know every detail of what happened behind closed doors. But here's what I do know. CP3 is a 12-time All-Star, an 11-time All-NBA selection, a 9-time All-Defensive player, the second all-time leader in assists and steals, the first player in NBA history to score 20,000 points and dish out 10,000 assists. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. His number was going to hang in that new Intuit Dome, and you sent him home at 2:40 in the morning, in the middle of his farewell tour, via text message. There's no excuse for that. If there were problems, you address them like professionals. You have a conversation. You give the man respect. You don't have your assistant coach tell him that he doesn't have leeway. You don't refuse to meet with him when he asks. You don't stop talking to him for weeks and then kick him off the team in the middle of the night. That's not how you treat a legend. That's not how you treat anyone. And to the Clippers organization, when does this stop? Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeMarcus Cousins, Rajon Rondo, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, PJ Tucker. At some point, you gotta stop blaming the players and start looking in the mirror. Chris Paul deserves better. He deserves a proper ending, and I really hope somebody out there steps up and gives this man the farewell he earned. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.